Pisello, the ROI guy.
Hi, this is April Morley, co-founder of Genius Drive and the Enterprise Value Collective.
And welcome to the Value Coffee Talk podcast.
This podcast is a service of the Enterprise Value Collective, a community for business value-focused leaders and practitioners, and is sponsored by our value consultancy, Genius Drive.
And our mission, besides drinking some good coffee and tea here in the afternoon, is to help accelerate and optimize the value articulation in each of your customer engagements and throughout your customer lifecycle. And to help us do a better job of that is a topic I know that many of you have asked about. We invited Peter Cohan here. And if you don't know Peter, he's the author of the book, Great Demo: How to Create and Execute Stunning Software Demonstrations. There it is. And he's principal of consultancy, The Second Derivative, which I love that name. Welcome, Peter.
All about acceleration.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Those engineers of us knew that right away. We see today's buyer doing, kind of a ton of research before they engage with the seller. And most often they're engaging by clicking the give me a demo button that seems to be a fixture on every website. What are buyers expecting when they do this? And is it maybe perhaps setting the wrong expectation?
So I think this is a very interesting question. What are they really expecting? Probably the worst. And let me explain. Many are expecting when they click a book a demo button to be qualified in a call by an SDR or a BDR where they may never even see a demo. And in fact, I invented a term called lead churn. In other words, leads that churn even before they enter the funnel because they got qualified out and never got a chance to see the demo they wanted. What are they really expecting? They're really expecting, sadly, a stunningly awful, boring harbor tour demo. In other words, a demo that packs as many features and functions into a 1-hour overview drive as the vendor can possibly do. That's sadly what they're expecting.
So where do you think in this process there's a shortfall?
We are victims of momentum. We tend to do the same things over and over unless we're given a shove in a new direction. And so I think the question is, what can we do to change from a traditional, we've got to show them as much as we possibly can in a first engagement, to flipping the script. So in other words, dear prospect, what is it that you are looking for? What is it that you are hoping to accomplish? And generally speaking, what the prospect wants in that first engagement from a demo is what I call a vision generation demo. It is just enough, it's like an appetizer. It's just enough to satisfy the prospect's desire to get a sense of what is possible. And then it's actually designed to move the prospect, once you've provided them with what they want, a 2 to 3 minutes of what is possible in the software, to move them into everybody say it together, a discovery conversation. Because once you're in a discovery conversation, then you can learn what you need to do to move to a technical proof demo. In other words, a second demo where you're actually presenting exactly the specific capabilities the prospect feels they need to solve their problems. So expectations versus reality today are quite a bit different, but that would be the guidance. Does that help?
It does. Peter, the show up and throw up kind of demo has the exact opposite effect that we think it should have. By presenting more and more, hey, we're sellers, we're proud of our solution, we're a system engineer, we're proud of the solution, we want to show it off. And we think that we've only got one shot, the Eminem song, you only got one shot to make it right. So it kind of tends to be natural that the seller shows up and just starts to deliver and then keeps delivering with very little interaction, and unfortunately has the unintended effect of overchoice. Now, with so many features shown, the buyer is not clarified, but it's the exact opposite. They are now much more confused, and they will also not differentiate your solution. But from a neuroscience perspective, the more things that are shown, your brain is actually averaging all of these things together to where it becomes essentially a mush of features and functions and not clarifying one bit. And with buyers today lacking confidence in the decisions we're making, this can have true damage, not even moving it to the next call, but actual damage of making it to where it's no wonder why so many deals are stalled after that first call.
So this is really intriguing because you touched on something that is one of my personal missions, and that's to avoid buying it back. Buying it back. The more features, the more capabilities that a prospect sees that they perceive as unnecessary that they would never use. Well, and this is a value conversation. What happens when it's time to negotiate that license agreement if the prospect has decided to move forward? What does the prospect say to the vendor?
Yeah, they say,
I
you've
don't
showed
need
me
it
all
all.
these features. I don't need it all. Yeah.
And so give me a
Discount.
discount. That is why it's,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's why it's called buying it back, because you are. The more it's an interesting trap, because marketing folks and sales management will often say, hey, I want to make sure you show as much as you can, especially these particular features, because they're competitively differentiating. But if the prospect doesn't perceive a need for those capabilities, all you're doing is saying, hey, to the prospect, here's a bunch of stuff you're never going to use, so we'll have to drop the price if you want to buy it. So it's an interesting and negative aspect. The second part of what you talked about, human psychology, is really intriguing. In our great demo workshops, we will, out of the blue, we'll say, all right, everybody, pens down, ears open, everybody quiet. I'm going to read a list of 10 words. We just proceed to read a list of 10 undifferentiated pieces of data. And then we pause for a moment. We say, okay, pick up your pens and pencils and write down as many as you can remember. And what happens when we go down that list of 10 words is they remember the first one really well, about 95% retention. The second word is up there around 85%. And then guess what happens for most of the rest?
Dramatic fall off.
It's like the sound of crickets in an empty room. And then when you get, when you get to the last one, the very last item in the list, as I like to phrase it, hope rises. They've gotten to the end. And it is a little bit, it's about 50% retention. So it's called, in psychology, I didn't know this, I was trained as a chemist, I learned this along the way, it's called the primacy recency effect and the serial positioning effect. And for whatever reason, remember Monty Python, 3 shall be the number? It turns out our brains are wired to remember 3 things at a time quite well. So the primacy recency studies show exactly that. You remember the first couple of things that are presented in any undifferentiated list of information, and that last item.
The last one.
So with respect to demos, what does that suggest you should do? Hint, hint.
Show maybe 3 things. And Peter, I think this leads us to the important element of, you want to have, if they signed up for a demo and they don't get a demo, you're not meeting an expectation. And I would always struggle with that, because you do want to deliver. You don't want to just have it be a qualifying call and then have it being a discovery call and then get to some demonstration, because they'll flat out say nowadays, hey, I signed up for a demo. It said get a demo. I signed up for that. But at the same time, if we're not refining that list of what are the 3 things we're going to show down to help vision, or perhaps use it for diagnosis, how do we get to the pain, which is so important that we get to in the diagnosis? And how can we use the demo to really highlight and illuminate the pain and the impact so that we can motivate emotionally the buyer to change, which is what ultimately we have to do?
So one vehicle that we teach is called, as I said, a vision generation demo, which starts by, well, number one, you need to know your prospect's job title and industry. Let's just talk about a a simple case where you have an individual. You need to know their job title and industry. Because, for example, if you were selling CRM software, there are easily 13 distinctly different job titles that might be interested in your offering, from CRO to head of marketing to individual players to enablement and an admin. Each of them have different goals and objectives, different problem sets, different capabilities they're looking for. So, first step in vision generation is to align the job title with an informal success story. So you might start your demo, your vision generation demo, by saying, hey, so you clicked on the book a demo button. Before we dive in deeply, let me share with you how we've helped other, whatever your job title is, other heads of sales make their numbers on a consistent quarterly basis. They shared they were suffering from blah, 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 blah. They said they were looking for blah, 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 blah. Well, we provided those capabilities, and what we hear from them now is they've been able to generate in similar organizations to yours an incremental $2 million in revenues. Pause. How does this compare with your situation? And what happens is prospect uses that discussion as a template, and they say, well, yeah, I'm a head of sales, similar industry. Yeah, I got to make my numbers because that's what we do. Problems are very similar. However, this is different, that's different. And yeah, I'm interested in these kinds of capabilities. The vendor then says, wonderful, I'd like to explore this more in a moment, but for now, would you like an example or two of how these other folks have been solving their problems using our capabilities? Prospect says, yes, please. And then you share one or two or three end deliverable screens. So for a head of sales, it might be the current forecast, the pipeline over the next several quarters, and perhaps the key opportunities that he or she needs to coach and inspect. That's the vision generation demo. You present those three screens, describe what they're seeing, how it helps them solve typical problems, and the value associated with making the change. To actually say in other organizations, they were able to generate an incremental $2 million each year going forward. That's the hook. And then you say, how does this compare? Is this the kind of thing you had in mind? Prospect says yes, begins to talk. And that's when you move them. So before we go on, prospect has now seen enough. They've seen what they wanted that book a demo button mash to do. Now they could ask to see more at that point. It's quite possible, but what often happens is now they are relaxed. They've been satisfied, and they are now willing to actually have a discovery conversation, from which you then can actually put together a specific needs demo based on what you've heard.
Yeah.
It's
Peter,
not rocket science.
Yeah. One of the refinements in that I would love you to try from our own experience is perfect. Like the storyline is perfect. That curve is perfect. What if instead of going through the bigger story in the beginning, you just focus on the pain and the impact? Like sellers like you, we see that they're sales leaders like you, we see that 69% of sellers are missing quota. There's more and more weight now being carried by less and less of the team. Is that a challenge that you're addressed with? What is it for you? And then you can lead into hey, we've solved it for a couple of others by doing this, and then show the demo, and then talk about the impact, so that it's a little bit more soundbited and also delays almost the pitch part, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and this is what I'm suggesting is vision generation is about the softest pitch possible, because you're simply saying, hey, here's how other folks are using our tools. Totally up to you what you want to do.
Yeah.
Looks interesting, we can continue. If not, we can make a mutual decision and we'll just nurture you for the next however long. However, there's a subtlety here that we've teased out. Gartner and probably 50 others have noted that something on the order of 45% of all forecasted opportunities end as what?
Do nothing.
Do nothing, no decision. Single biggest competitor in most organizations. And at least in our experience, I'd love to get your perception on this. There are typically three reasons, gotta love threes, three reasons why sales opportunities end as a no decision. Number one, Prospect has pain, but they've not attached that to a goal or objective that is at risk.
Mm-hmm.
And an example of that might be, would be a good one. A salesperson who says, I need more leads. I've got to have more and better leads. But that salesperson, if they're making their numbers on a quarterly basis, are they really going to pursue that? No. On the other hand, if they're at risk of not making their numbers, that will be a critical business issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we do in this informal success story is we identify a critical business issue in addition to, if you will, the pain portion.
The impact, yeah.
So so number one is number one reason for no decision outcomes. It's not attached to a critical business issue. We can live with the pain that we know forever, right? Number two, and this is you, Tom, insufficient perception of value.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got to be tangible. It can't be, hey, if you buy our software, you'll save time and money. Yawn. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
No, if you implement our software, it looks like based on our conversation, you'll be able to generate an incremental $2 million in revenues and redeploy 3.5 full-time equivalents to other more valuable tasks. That's tangible, and it's their numbers, which makes them believable. And then number three, which is not in the informal success story, is a critical date. When do you need to have a solution in place? And if there's no crisp answer to that question, man, that's going to get kicked down the road forever. Would you like proof?
Yes.
How many of us would have ever written those papers in university if we didn't have a due date?
Yeah, you definitely need that compelling event.
You need a compelling event.
Absolutely.
So that's why we actually use this structure for the informal success story. But I love your approach, and it's the same basic idea.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I do want to highlight that. It is the same. It's just a little bit of postponement. Like I would just postpone a little bit later talking about outcomes until I actually visioned the solution, and try to delay that and focus on the diagnostic more than the prescription. But you've got to, the demo is going to be, it's got to be prescriptive based on a priority that they said or a pain that they said they wanted to address. So pain to a priority outcome or priority goal that they have, impact and outcome, so that that you're going to make an impact and have an outcome, and then compelling event. Love it. Yep.
By the way, I have to share this. This is the book I should have written first.
Oh, the Doing Discovery.
Yeah.
So I first published. Don't laugh when I say this, but I first published Great Demo in 2003. Right, that's back in another entire era. Just released the third edition 7 months ago or something like that. But it was a few years ago that I realized, you know what? People have no clue in many cases how to do discovery. People can't even differentiate discovery from qualification. If the answer to the BAT acronym is yes, 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 well, then we move forward. Well, that's not discovery. That's qualification is done for the benefit of the vendor, whereas discovery is done for the benefit of both parties.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious on the value proposition side. A lot of teams have a hard time with discovery around outcomes. How do you see the relationship between giving a great demo and identifying the potential outcomes that a customer could achieve? What would be your advice there?
So in the correct world, if you will, the best world, discovery should give you the desired outcomes and the value associated with those. That's what the Doing Discovery book is designed to help people do. And you do that through simple questioning. So things like somebody says, it's taking me forever to get this done. Okay. The traditional salesperson would say, and I quote, great, like person's bleeding profusely. Yeah. And the doctor says, great. I'm excited to see that. Blood everywhere. Now, the traditional salesperson has uncovered pain, and that's where they stop. And the more skilled team members will say, okay, well, how often is this taking place? And what happens when? What's the internal impact of this? Does it delay other operations? Are there errors that creep into this process? And then, dear prospect, you said it takes you some time to get this fixed. Well, tell me something. How much time does it take? Ah, I
Hmm.
see. And how much time would you like it to take or need it to take to be able to feel that you've solved that problem? This is a delta. It's the difference between the current situation and the desired future state.
Hmm.
And when you multiply that little time by the number of instances, by the number of people, well, you can get some pretty big numbers. So
Yeah.
that is what we teach in the discovery phase. When you hit the demo, your job, anytime you present the end of a workflow, you present a deliverable, a dashboard, a takeaway screen, is to communicate those three things that I mentioned, what the prospect is looking at. So what you're looking at here is a dashboard that has your forecast, blah, 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 blah. Number two, how it's going to help them solve their problems. So this shows you exactly where you're strong, where you're weak, and here are the opportunities that you probably need to dig into. And then you also articulate the tangible value with that screen showing. And
Hmm.
this, we hope, will enable you to generate that incremental $3 million in revenues that you said you need to really achieve your objectives. So we teach to do that every single time you present a key deliverable. So
Yeah.
you're attaching, and it's an interesting subtlety. What you want is for the prospect to literally attach that value to the screen that they're seeing in front of them.
Hmm.
How does that resonate?
Yeah, definitely
Yeah,
resonates. Good.
it does. It makes a lot of sense. And, reiterating the outcomes and the potential with every screen throughout the demo, I think is something that's missed a lot. I'd be curious on the relationship. Oftentimes, it's someone like a sales engineer who's giving a demo, and then you have the sales person on the call. You might have a few. Uh, what recommendations do you have for those teams to collaborate together to make sure that that's all captured and brought back together into a business case?
You just slit the jugular vein of most sales teams.
Hmm.
Yeah.
This is one of the biggest challenges. Very, very often we have situations today where if you will, the pre-sales person is a more seasoned veteran than their counterparts. Not always, but in
Mhm.
many cases. And the teaming approach, what am I going to be asking in discovery? What are you going to be asking in discovery? What are we responsible for collecting, for example, in discovery? And then in the demo, what are you going to do in the demo? What am I going to do? How do we team play this? This is just basic. Oh, I hate to use the American analogy, blocking and tackling.
Hmm.
Mhm.
But it is, and yet it is so often. Uh, let's continue with an analogy. Imagine a football team where the quarterback just says, "Hey, you know what? I'm just going to hand this off to the running back, and everybody else can do what they want."
Mhm.
It's almost power to
Yeah, I
curve.
can see that playing out in a lot of demos. Yeah.
Yeah, it's what you hear is, and here's my technical expert who's going to give you the demo. And then, in the bad old days, the salesperson would be in the back of the conference room tapping away on his or her BlackBerry. And today it's over Zoom, and they look like they're looking at their webcam, but they're actually reading emails. So it's,
Mhm.
same type of thing. No, it has to be visualized as a team sport. And I'll give you a small example of where the two need to play together during the demo. Whenever there's a meaningful question from the prospect, and there should be questions because you want it to actually be a conversation,
Hmm.
and it's a question that needs to be parked for whatever reason, that it's not appropriate at that moment, or it's something that can't be answered, or it's a technical question that feedback is required for, the salesperson should capture it, for example,
Hmm.
and be responsible for that parking lot. Very simple, but very important activity that's a key element of team play. So
Yeah.
April, that's worth an article on its own.
Mhm.
I agree with that. Totally agree, April, on that. I think from you've got to have these plays mapped out, like you said. You don't just have the quarterback hike, hand the ball off, and then not have the blockers go to create the holes that need to occur, the guard pulling into that hole to be the lead blocker. All of those things need to be pre-orchestrated. And I think having and teaching those defined roles and where they are. One that's pretty obvious to me is if going into each feature that you want to demonstrate, the seller is responsible for the business end, which is here's the pain that you indicated, and here's how that aligns to some goals that you have. Then the pre-sales engineer takes over and says, here's what you're looking at, and then here's how this will solve your problem. And then the seller jumps in at the end and says, well, here's the business outcomes that you can anticipate for this. And so the seller is kind of managing the business track more, while the pre-sales engineer is focused on more the what and the how and the technical.
So I am in violent agreement. That is a truly a great demo. But there's another level here that's very, very important. We talked about this primacy recency thing and what people remember. Where I was going with this is, in every segment of the demo, you need to think in terms of three things. That's another three. Number one, it's another three. Number one, show them the end result for that particular task or function right at the beginning, so people know where it's going and what's in it for them. So, in other words, dear audience, what you're going to see in a moment is the pipeline for the next 5 quarters, because you said you wanted to see it and you want to see how this is laid out so that you can help you track and see where you are, blah, 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 blah. So you show the pipeline, describe what's seeing, and then, and this is so simple and yet so hard for so many people to do, you go into the software at a logical starting place, like I've already logged in, and you proceed to navigate to that pipeline view in the fewest number of clicks. And the way to think about this is, if you were a sales leader on Monday morning and you want to look at your pipeline, do you look at all the ifs and ors and different views and options? No. You go click, click, pipeline view. That's the modus that we try to teach people to do. No extra clicks. Your job's to make it look easy to use, very simple and not complicated. Do a summary, and then let the prospect decide if they want to go deeper. So the prospect may say, head of sales says, wow, this is really great, but can I zoom in on Q4? Absolutely, let's do that now. Boom. Talk a little bit about what they wanted to see. It's a quick summary. So that's how you zoom in on Q4. Anything else you'd like to see? Yeah, actually, I'd love to see if there's a way that I could slice this by region. Terrific. Let's take a look at it by region. Summarize. So you're turning it into a conversation, but every single pathway is executed. Put your hands up like this and make that same motion and say the words, with the fewest number of clicks. Fewest number of clicks. There are, I have to add this, there are 2 words that unconsciously drive fear and loathing in prospects' minds in the middle of a demo. You know what those are?
Let me show you more.
Okay, that would be 3 words or 3 phrases.
All right, that didn't count right. I'm the
Let
ROI.
me show you where it's at.
What's counting?
Exactly. If and or. Because those words branch your demo. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Now, if you want to do this other thing, let me show you that.
You're so right.
How many times in demos have you seen the vendor present multiple ways to execute a single task? And what are you thinking as they're doing that?
Complexity. How am I going to learn this? How am I going to get each other people how to use it? Yep.
Sales prevention team.
Yeah.
And what often other people are thinking is, just show me the fastest way to get this done.
Love it.
I mean, there is no, well, okay, I was going to say there's no GPS system on Earth that actually shows you multiple pathways, but it yeah, they do. Google Maps will show you, but it also says this one's going to take longer. So it's grayed out to a certain degree. But you know, nobody would get in their car with the desire to go from Manhattan to upstate New York via Minnesota unless it was really a designated road trip. If they had to get to a dinner party that evening, they're not going to take that route through Wisconsin. So when people use the word if, when vendors use the word if and they use the word or in demos, they are artificially lengthening and adding complexity to something that could have been 1 or 2 clicks, get her done.
Well, Peter, this has been incredibly insightful. I think we could go on for another half an hour if we had the time. I really appreciate it. What is the one piece of advice you'd like to leave the Enterprise Value Collective with today?
Do discovery. This is the single least practice function of sales. Do discovery. There are so many dimensions of discovery that people miss, including, and values one of the biggest. Here's Tom and April, something that I see all the time, and our friends at Kuvama mentioned this as well, that sellers are often, they say they are uncomfortable to ask questions about value, when in fact
Yeah.
they should be perceiving this as helping the prospect sell internally by being able to uncover tangible elements of value and then recommunicate them through the discovery process, through the demos and post-demo processes. Yeah, do discovery.
Peter, we couldn't agree more. Our first Enterprise Value Collective meeting that we're having is all around discovery because we feel it's so important as well. So thank you so much. Thanks for participating in the Value Coffee Talk podcast.
My pleasure, and I'd look forward to doing more.
Awesome. Please sign
Thanks,
up if
Peter.
you haven't done so yet for the Enterprise Value Collective on LinkedIn, geniusdrive.com website, to stay in touch with us on the latest events, tools, and insights like our Enterprise Value Collective meetup that we're having on Discovery. If you liked this episode, which we hope you did, Peter was great with some great information. Hit the like button, subscribe so you stay up to date and know when we publish, which is about weekly at this point. And until next time, our Enterprise Value Collective, keep sharing, keep growing together.